And Team, the group formed by the Howling and Audition show, is having their debut on December 7th, where they will be releasing their debut album, First Howling Me. There are going to be 2 versions, which they've already started to release trailers and concepts and images and videos for, and they are called Isolated and Juvenile. We will be discussing these today, along with their concept debut trailer, which released last week, and we're going to talk about a little bit of the direction of the group in general, and of course how it ties into their narrative story. Hi, my name is Lena, and I make Hybe theories, videos, content surrounding Hybe and the Hybe storylines. Please make sure to give this video a thumbs up so that more people can find it. It really helps me out. Okay, let's talk about this. So we knew going into the And Audition show that the boys who came out of this were supposed to feature the werewolves that are like the counterpart to the vampires in Dark Moon, the Blood Altar. So, you know, they're the rivals of them. Both groups play Nightball, which is kind of like a mix of like rugby and American football. However, we do have a confirmation at this point now that And Team has their own original story called Dark Moon, the Grey City. We don't have more specific details about that, but there's a lot that I can infer from things that have already come out, so we're going to talk about that a little bit more. A lot that we've actually seen so far really does seem to parallel the Grey City and what the storyline will be, but it also parallels with their personal debut. This story is not only telling us the story of these wolf boys, but it's also telling us the story of And Team. So this is in a similar way that ENHYPEN's story sort of showed the struggle from island into a debuting group. This looks like it's going to be doing that same thing, or at least it seems to so far. Basically, you can expect the visuals to be telling 2 stories, the actual real-life boys story, and also the fictional werewolf story at the same time. And these visuals will match both, hopefully. So let's see how they're doing that with And Team. So first, looking at the debut trailer. This trailer is pretty obvious setup for the storyline. It literally establishes the wolf idea in the first moment, telling us that wolves run boundlessly and endlessly across vast territories that they claim for themselves. Now, this also feels like a subtle reference to ENHYPEN, since ENHYPEN started within the border. They were walking on the line. And here they specifically say there is no border. It's borderless. It's boundless. So already the 2 groups are separate and different. So And Team is telling us their future, which is to stretch out beyond like the confines of just Tokyo, which is because of course this group is based out of Japan, and fearlessly create and share their art with people all over the world. So this is Hybe setting up this story, and they're letting the group naturally just take incremental steps towards their goal, which, like I said, is to be worldwide. It's like, hey, this is our goal, this is what we want to do, and we're going to work towards it. That's the whole point of the debut trailer, basically. They want to make it. They're going to be a worldwide success. But this group is just debuting. This is the start of their story. Like I said, Hybe often writes it in conjunction with the actual idols, so it should be paralleling the, journey of the idols themselves as well as the fictional story that they're telling. So if you look at this and you think that this is them coming together after the audition show and, you know, joining with their strengths and uplifting each other because they've now debuted, you're probably right. If you ever get that sense in the future that it's like, wow, this sort of feels a lot like stuff that they're going through, because obviously I don't know the future, but I'm just saying hypothetically, you're probably right, because they're probably doing that on purpose. They want to encompass that this is something that we're all going through together, and then they show it on screen through the narrative that they tell us. Something that is interesting about this in the trailer is that they immediately tell us that there are no lone wolves. It goes on to tell us that they follow the leader, an alpha of the pack, and they get through hardships through that leadership. In this case, I believe the alpha is probably the strongest wolf in the pack. Actual wolf experts no longer use the word alpha, by the way. It was based on kind of a misunderstanding. I'm not going to go into detail. You can read about it if you're interested. But since it's a common fiction trope at this point, we can pretty much assume that's what alpha means in this case, and they basically tell us the alpha just helps lead them. It's a leader. Now, in the Blood Altar, which is already out, the leader is kind of implied to be Khan, which is the name for Kay's character, but Heli, Heesung's character, is also the leader of the vampires, so this doesn't necessarily mean that And Team's leader will in fact be K. We don't have an official leader announced yet at the time of recording for Anteam. And I do want to say also, like, the Blood Altar was written before the audition show even happened, so they might have just, like, chosen someone in the first place, you know? So if it doesn't end up being Kay who is the leader, I wouldn't be surprised. There's several very valid theories. For example, Fuma is one of the members frequently mentioned as potentially being the leader. Haruwa, because of the focus that he gets in this trailer, is also mentioned as being potentially the leader of this group. And who knows, maybe they'll just vote for someone totally different that we haven't already considered or talked about. So yeah, my point is, even though in the storyline it's Kay, don't necessarily assume that that means that Kay is actually going to be the leader here. Anyways, back to the trailer. It does also talk about the Howling, and how Howling, which is the title of their debut album, First Howling, is kind of like a show of solidarity. It's an action that brings them together and shows that it leaves none who howl behind. It also says it's something they want to be able to do together. So again, coming to the name of the album, First Howling, it must be that this is the first Howling they are able to do together as a team. So from a regular standpoint, again, this comes back to the idea of the idols finally coming together and debuting after the competition-based setting of and auditioned the show. However, from a supernatural standpoint, it gives us some different ideas. It suggests that the Howling connects them together and can also genuinely increase their power. And it's not just because of the magic of teamwork, I think. I think it might be, like, genuinely, like, their power levels go over 9,000, you know what I mean? And not only that, but it's something that they have to gain by growing as a pack. So I feel like the more members there are that are joining this Howling, the stronger they will be. By the way, the trailer also seems to single out Haruwa as a character as, like, the weaker one. And that he works harder and becomes better because of his teammates and, like, the help and support of everyone on the team. I think this is obviously more of a narrative focus rather than something specifically in real life, although I do think it's worth mentioning that Haruwa was the fan voted member into the group. So yeah, he's very loved, and I wonder if maybe that was part of their reasoning. I don't know. I love him anyways, so he's literally the cutest. And also, I just wanted to say I absolutely love his freckles in this video. Adorable. I also kind of wonder if this makes him, like, the main character of the story or not. Because Jungwon did have a lot of focus on the Enhypen side, but he is not the main character of Enhypen's story. It's way too early to tell for sure. Anyways, this trailer does seem to set the stage for the idea that from a real life standpoint, we're going to watch the members grow while helping each other. But from a story standpoint, this does give us a little bit more to go off of in terms of the wading through the whole Dark Moon story that we don't understand. I'm guessing from this that the group is probably a newer pack at this point, so it would take place before the events of the Dark Moon, the Blood Altar, I'm guessing, and it'll be them coming together and howling for the first time, like I said before. I think that there's probably going to be a lot of, like, battles that take place. Just seems like there needs to be a reason for them to grow in strength, and we just don't know what the main conflict of the story is. But yeah, the basic idea I feel like is it starts with them actually finding each other and creating this pack, since they do specifically say that there are no lone wolves. So if there is someone who's maybe not with a pack, I assume the pack picks them up. In this case, I wonder if it would be Haruwa. I also think that at this point in the trailer, it is worth mentioning that, again, the different versions of the album seem to reference and contrast to Enhypen. I do think that Anteam will be developing their own identity from here on out, but I think that Hype is doing that because, as I mentioned, they are both a part of the same Dark Moon story, just in different times, I guess, or angles. And so they have to parallel each other because I assume, like, the Hybe original story writing department is, like, looking at it purely from a narrative standpoint, where this kind of parallel makes a lot of sense. But I just want to let you guys know that I don't think that it actually takes away from the identity of the group itself. Like, this is not just going to be Anteam, the group, alongside Enhypen. They're clearly completely different directions. We have Enhypen, they're the vampires, they're doing their own thing over here. And then we're going to have the wolves. And yes, they start off as parallels, but the whole point And yes, they start out as mirrors, but the whole point is that they're completely different. So I just wanted to let you know, anyone who's worried about like the identity of the group being tied to N-Hypen, I don't think you have to worry about that. And I do want to apologize since I do know I will be comparing them to N-Hypen a lot in this video, but that's mostly just because N-Hypen is the basis for what we know of the Dark Moon story right now. So I'm going to be relating it a lot to that. But I want you to know it's not all about N-Hypen. Thank you. Anyways, continuing still on this intro, it does also ask us, the viewer, if we will run with them, which is a cute touch, especially since the fandom name is Lune, which is also similar to the French word lune, which means moon. We are the moon that they howl at and run underneath. I don't know, I just love it. We will be the ones to help them grow stronger so that they can howl together. Again, I think this just kind of adds to the emphasis on the team focus. Since we're also brought into the equation, they won't leave us behind. You know, no lone wolves. We can also be a part of their team. That's so cute. Speaking of the moon though, one more thing I wanted to mention is that in this trailer still, I know, we see a blood moon. Now, we actually just had a blood moon in reality on the same day that this video was released, actually. Which I even got temporarily locked out of Twitter for sharing images of because apparently I didn't get the moon's permission. Thank you, Twitter. But we do know from the Dark Moon Blood Altar story a little bit more about blood moons and like moon eclipses? Eclipses of the moon? Moon eclipses? What? How do you say that? Eclipse of the moon? Why am I struggling so hard with this? Anyways, we know a little bit about a blood moon, which is the eclipse of the moon. Wolves fall in love with the first person they see during this time. And it is stated that this is the person that they will love for the rest of their lives. So in the So in the Dark Moon Blood Altar story, Khan, Kay's character, sees Suha, the main character of that story, and during the blood moon, and so presumably he falls in love with her. Again though, I do think that happens like way after the current storyline that they're going to be telling for this group. I just wanted to mention it because it is something that we do already actually know about werewolves, and we don't even know all that much about them, so. Also, they're being hunted by vampires in like the current timeline of the Blood Altar because the big head vampires think that drinking werewolf blood makes them stronger, which it kind of does, but like, anyway, it's based off a whole misunderstanding. If you want to understand what's going on there, I just made a video about it, so click the card. Anyways, let's move on to the individual versions of this album, starting with the isolated version. So isolated also means alone or separated, and they did specifically say there are no lone wolves, so rather than them being isolated from each other, I think it's them as a group being isolated from society. Or perhaps it's because they started out isolated and then found each other. I don't know. Let me know what you think about that. So this version sets them in what looks kind of like a rundown or abandoned building or place, with their clothes featuring rips and tears haphazardly like sewn back together, as if they had transformed with them on, and then, you know, the clothes then got ripped because they changed shape while wearing clothes. I can imagine that this whole place is where they stay because they can't integrate properly with humans or something like that. I don't know. It really just adds the idea that they're isolated from human society and like people who are living in places that aren't run down and covered in ivy. And this again makes the team or the pack the most important thing. Where N-Hypen had the Dusk version, which heavily featured them as vampires, I think this is the parallel kind of mirror opposite to that, where it is showing them purely as werewolves, or like suggesting them as the wolves. So this makes sense narratively, but I don't know if there's like a real life counterpart, like understanding to this. At least there's none that I can think of, so if you think that this somehow relates to the boys in real life as well as the story, let me know. But yeah, I literally just have no idea, so. By the way, I wanted to say this just kind of as a general note, but each of the concept clips ends also with like this kind of a glitchy effect, and we did see this glitchy effect before with N-Hypen, although it kind of seemed more like they were being watched and recorded, and that does feature in the second version, but not so much in the juvenile version, but it feels like significantly less creepy. So I don't know, they are both in the same universe, but I don't currently understand the significance of having this glitch effect. Just wanted to mention that. Anyways, moving on to the juvenile version, which I have a lot more to say about. Juvenile means young or inexperienced, and I think that this features their youthfulness, their beginning, their start. So where the isolated version kind of showed them in their supernatural state and with their supernatural selves, like specifically identity-wise as wolves, this seems to similarly mirror the Dawn version of Enhypen's Border Day 1 album. So Enhypen had been in like an open field, and then it felt like they had really been freed from the confines of the border that they're in. But here we're like more in the woods, and they kind of just feel at home in the woods. We do actually have them in a field as well, but I just wanted to say that it's supposed to be the contrast between the photos where it's like, clearly it's the same thing, you know what I mean? But yeah, the videos are in also a field, which may in fact be the same field. I don't know. But the composition of the photos really parallel each other. If you take a look at them individually, you're like, whoa, this looks so similar. I'm sure they did that on purpose. However, we do get a look at some supernatural stuff here, even though it isn't featuring them as wolves necessarily. For example, Kay is seen levitating a stone. So we do know that from Dark Moon, the Blood Altar. Ever since saying Blood Moon, I'm just so confused. We know from that story that the wolves are strong and quick, but I don't think we've ever seen them like levitating things before or having more explicit powers, but maybe that's just because they're not really focused on. I feel like them having some form of power actually makes a lot of sense because they're supposed to be kind of on equal grounds with the vampires, especially so that they can play nightball against each other, and clearly they duke it out and they fight over, I don't know, territory or something. But yeah, they have to be at least evenly matched, and I feel like if the vampires have like all these cool powers, it's kind of not fair if they can just set your woods on fire, you know what I mean? But it's kind of hard to say if these other photos are actually like showing us more of their powers or not. Like, does EJ being in a tree mean something? Or Taki holding a stick? I don't know, maybe it's only Kay who is the presumed leader in the storyline who has additional abilities. I don't know, is that like an alpha thing? Let me know what you think about that. Do you think we're gonna see some more powers and special abilities? Ooh. I always like the abilities, so I wouldn't be upset. The concept videos are also really notable in this version specifically because most of them have a time and date code of 3:48 p.m. on June 19th in 2003, which I personally find hysterical because like half of the members weren't even born yet at that time. But I digress. This date is just interesting in general, and we have to kind of keep it in mind because I was Googling it and I didn't find any like major significant event that would have made sense for this date to be relevant. Not in Japan, not in North America. I don't know what this date means. It's probably something they came up with and we just don't have context for it yet. There's something else of note that have to do with the dates, and again, it has to do specifically with Harua's version, because while everyone else has the date I just told you, Harua has different dates, 2 different dates, and neither of them are right. What? The first date shown for him is 9:59 p.m. on May 6th, 2005, which is actually like 5 days after his real life birthday, which is May 1st of 2005. And then it jumps to 1:32 on February 19th of 2002. As if he was kind of like looking for the right date, but he kind of ended up like around it somehow, like in the past and in the future, but the date is right here. I don't know what this means. Like, is he time traveling somehow? We do know Hive loves their time traveling, and that Dark Moon does feature some sort of weird time travel. Like Jungwon's character can do some sort of thing with slowing down time, potentially reversing time, and then there's a whole dimensions thing going on. Does that relate to that somehow? Is it just that he joins the group last, or for some reason joins, leaves, and then rejoins later? I don't know. Is he lost? I don't know, but it is notable since he's the only one with the differences, and he shows 2 dates specifically. Harua main character arc. Anyways, that is it. Thank you guys so much for watching. I hope that this was useful and entertaining, and that you're hyped for their debut to come, because I certainly am. I've been following them very closely ever since the show. So yeah. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you did like this video, please make sure to give it a thumbs up if you haven't already, and make sure to subscribe with notifications turned on so that YouTube tells you every single time I post a video. All of my social media is linked in the description if you want to follow me, like on Twitter or something like that. And of course, I want to give a shout out to my patrons over on Patreon. Thank you guys so much for all of your support. If you want to become a patron, the link is in the description down below. As it is, thank you guys so much for watching. Stay sunny, everyone. Bye!